Okay. It seems like we're streaming and recording.
I think we're ready to go. Thank you.
Okay. I will call to order this May 9th, 2024 meeting of the Moab City Planning Commission at 6:05 p.m. Corey, I would like to sort of empower you as someone currently in chambers to maybe, if you're okay with it, have a little more active hand in running the meeting and queuing folks and doing stuff like that, just because I can't see who's in the audience or anything like that, if that's all right with you.
Perfect. That sounds good.
That said, the first item on our agenda is citizens to be heard. I would love maybe Corey, if you're able to just do a quick run through for our transcript folk of who's present in chambers from staff and commission, and then also if we have anybody in the audience, that would be great.
Thank you. For attendance in the chambers, we have Anna Anglin from city staff, Corey Shurtleff, planning director. We have Mikkel Layton, planning commission, Miles Lofton, planning commission, and Carolyn Connett, planning commission. We have no other attendance in the chambers, both citizens or staff. This is what you see is what you're getting. And then we have Kaya Marienfeld, planning commission chair, joining remotely.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. I appreciate it. Okay. Yeah. Citizens to be heard. Sounds like there's no one in chambers, and I don't believe we received anything either through the city's comment portal or on email. So we will move along through that section. Next item of business is approval of minutes from our April 25th, 2024 regular meeting. Our last meeting. If folks have had a chance to check that out, look it through, we can entertain a motion, or if there are any corrections that need to be made.
I didn't see any corrections. Did anyone else?
I wasn't here, but the minutes read like they seem to match the meeting I watched. So
I'll motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting, April 25th, 2024.
Great. We have
Okay.
Mikkel,
I'll second the motion.
and Carolyn has made a second. We'll go ahead, and I think we can still just do an all in favor. We don't
Great.
have to do a roll call vote, just with the one remote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all four members vote aye, motion passes.
It's really weird to see myself on the screen. It's very like Inception. Okay. Thanks, everybody. All right, motion passes. Minutes from our last meeting. Next, moving on to our action items. First action item is 4.1, consideration and possible approval of planning resolution number 03/2024, a planning resolution approving the Cottonwood condominium plat on property located at 214 South, 200 East, Moab, Utah, 84532. This is a briefing and possible action. Corey, take it away.
Thank you. We're going to have Anna Anglin, I think, present this item.
Okay, then Anna, take it away.
So this one has come up a few times. We've done a few amendments on the site plan. We've had quite a bit of history on this, but this is just to approve the plat only. Again, for a refresher, its location is, or the name of it's Cottonwood Condominiums. Location 214 South, 200 East. It's in the R3 zone. It's a 9-unit condo project. The history and application process for a condo plat. The applicant initially submitted this September 25th, 2023. And then got their development review team review on October 11th, 2023, then resubmitted March 6th of this year and got a planning DRT go ahead on May 1st. And so we scheduled it for today's meeting.
What was the reason for the resubmittal? It stalled out?
Well, they needed to make some corrections on it. So So, section 17.79.060 gives planning commission authority to approve condominium plats of our ordinance. This is the condo plat. This is basically the footprint of the building that we're, approving. And then the location, all of the shared, common area and that type of thing that goes along with condo plats. Here's the footprint of each unit of building. And then I also included, in case we need any references, the project background and timeline. And then a motion of approval. Does anybody have any questions about the condominium plat itself?
I might, before we get into discussion, and commission comments, if Anna, you'd scroll one slide down to that floor plan. There's two elements I just wanted to make a point. Anna and I were kind of coordinating on this. To give one is just a brief update on the current status of the general project. And then the second is maybe to describe a little bit of what we're seeing here on this plat, which is atypical for maybe Moab, but from the Utah perspective, not uncommon. So the first with the update is that we are currently processing and executing a appeal process for the decision that was determined on the site plan. So again, these are separate processes. Coordinating with our attorney, it makes sense for due process that we continue this condominium process. We obviously are coordinating with the applicants, whether they wanted to wait until the conclusion of that appeal process or continue through that. The reason for our note here is that kind of putting the commission a little bit more at ease that the determinations, and kind of to Mikkel's original point, well, what was the amendment? Why do they resubmit? Is again, these balconies, the condominium plat, which brings me to a second point, which is the platting here. You'll see on the lower half of this platting section for those floor plans, a double hashed area. Those are limited common area, which means they're essentially have private access, or the way that in which they're going to be described through the HOA and their CC&Rs is they're basically private patios, but they're not part of the private ownership selection. They're a limited common. So it's a type of definition that the developer is using as far as who's going to maintain, and we'll just leave it at maintain those spaces, because obviously it'll be limited use as common, but generally experienced as a part of that common bar. So I guess, again, dialing back to what we were dealing with is as these balconies were changing back and forth, they were there, they weren't there, now they were different sizes. That was all affecting the platting because they were having to be described in the meets and bounds of that. So that was part of this reason of, from even the original, I believe 2023 to the 2024, and then the updated 2024.
Yeah.
So the platting was, I think, all along trying to move concurrently with the site plan, but as the site plan went through its process, it had to take back steps to try to catch up. So now we're at a place where the planning commission had made an approval. They're advancing the platting at that time, but also this understanding that through this appeal process, if the ALJ determines that the decision is deficient and that decision is then remanded back to the planning commission, meaning the balconies can't be amended through that major change of process, at least without the AEH coming into effect. We'll wait to see what the applicants want to do, but their platting would also have to be amended again. So even if we approve it tonight, my point is, just because we're approving tonight doesn't mean that it's the end of the discussion if the ALJ remands that application.
And
So
an
if they,
approval or otherwise tonight will not affect that ALJ.
it will not.
Yeah,
that
so
appeal
this
process.
basically won't be able to be recorded with the county until after the ALJ decision.
Or if they do record, it will
Then
have
they
to be
have to,
amended
yeah.
through either an affidavit or something else after the fact. Oh gosh. We're still streaming. Okay, it looks like my Zoom on my private computer dropped off, so I'm glad the Zoom is still running.
Yeah, it's still, and I still see YouTube and recording on mine.
Okay, it did this last meeting.
Mine
It's,
did
ve-
not.
it's very spooky
Scary. I didn't want
when
to-
you're the one that's the host.
Yeah.
But we'll see if we can get back in here. Okay, anyway, while this is updating.
So the decision that we made that day, that we were
It's
not
being
happy to
appealed.
make, is the one that's being appealed.
Yes.
Correct. So again, that's a little bit outside of where I think Anna's coming from is the administrative review of what is being reviewed. So
Okay.
we'll go ahead and advance that forward, but did want to give a little bit of context to how this fits into the bigger
We
timeline.
appreciate the full disclosure.
Sure.
But
Hey,
today, we're-
Hey, Mikkel, I'm having a heck of a time hearing you. Would you mind putting your mic a little closer to your?
Would you like me to shout like you are?
I'm talking
Sorry.
so quietly right now. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Okay, so thank you, Anna. That was the only, I think, interjection I had
Thank you.
before.
Yeah, thank you for
I think
I think
clarifying.
that
that.
provides
Commission
good
discussion.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess, I mean, other than that, this is an administrative action for the planning commission as the land use authority for these. It's, what we're gonna be seeing with our next item as well is a plating exercise. Again, there's no development elements in this, and condominium plating specifically from the state of Utah is pretty formalized at that state level. We don't have a lot of say in how that's constructed, but, yeah, it's again, one of the typical exercise.
Can you talk to us about, this wasn't applied for as condominiums then, when they started this whole project?
It
They didn't
was.
submit the plat with the original site plan, but they did let us know their intentions were it to become a
Mhm.
condominium plat.
That's not something that's required at the
Well,
beginning.
we
think
are
it's something
gonna
we're
change our policies on that, but when this was originally submitted, that wasn't part of our policy.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we're gonna see that with our next item, which is a townhome, similar situation.
Yeah.
Previous plating within Moab specifically was pretty dependent on having actual bearings to determine the plating. In that, when we've seen that plating was submitted or executed or approved prior to anything being done on site, and then they go to start construction and start moving things around, and we can see this within our plating right now, it was almost always incorrect. We'll kind of put it that way. So where the plating was legally versus where things on ground weren't matching up. Vectors were either off, the meets and bounds were incorrect. I think mostly that's a technology issue historically. And so we followed what used to be, well, we know you're gonna be platting. This is an ownership overlay exercise, but let's get your land use development and then your construction permits all going first. And then once you have your foundations set, then let's shoot for your plat. So now that plating has become a little bit more of a entitlements question, entitlements piece, with our rewrite, we're gonna require that all those things are obviously executed up front. And then if your plat's wrong, you're gonna have
you
to
gotta
go
build
back
to
and
what you
fix it.
said you were gonna do. and
Um,
You have to
okay,
either
later.
fix the condo plat or
fix
the
the-
site plan, and
Right.
that's harder to do than you would think.
So this is, so that's where this is the path of least resistance historically, but yeah, through our entire original pre-applications, everything dating back to 2021, even 2022, when this project very first started, it was always a condominium project from the get-go. But that was, again, one of the questions we did want to raise with our attorneys of, is that still sound? Is that still good? It was obviously determined yes at this point. I think the ALJ's determination with AEH will shed a little bit of light on our processing system as well.
Mhm.
But it's not exactly the same question, but it will, I think, help let us know how imminently we really need to be changing this, or if it's like, okay, when it's convenient, we can go ahead and change it. But for the time being, it's our policy and precedent of
Okay.
procedure.
Okay.
Good questions.
I think this is the first time a plat approval has come in front of me personally.
Mhm.
And from what you're describing, Corey, it's pretty like cut and dry admin action, but can you give examples of what some of the reasons might be that a planning commission would not approve a plat?
Sure.
It would, in most situations, site, condominium plats are approved along with the site plan or the site plan review process. And so it's either, most of the time it's an all or nothing situation. But since this was submitted separate from the initial site plan review, then it is a standalone approval. But if for whatever reason you would not be able to, is that it was deficient in some way or another as far as the way the condo plat was constructed, that would be a reason for not approving it.
Essentially, the submittal criteria wasn't being met. It didn't have the correct information or didn't have sufficient information. So, which is something with these plats, I think we did make some comments that they didn't have the adequate signature blocks for a little bit. I know as silly as that is, making sure that the right people are signing the right plats, and also the bearings and measurements are correct. That was something that, especially with the balconies, as it was at play, we need to continually reaffirm that the bearings are correct, because it might be built one way, but all of a sudden there's gonna be a legal difference between who owns what. So it's more or less a much of a fact finding situation than it is a regulatory analysis of anything else.
And there's not anything that keeps the developer from advertising these for sale before any of these steps, right? There's no kind of like
Right.
state code or anything that
Not
you
for-
can advertise what you want to
I think
sell.
not
long
advertising,
before the
but
bill
as
could
far
be-
as sale goes, that is a major, yeah, I was just reviewing
couldn't
this
sell
at the
condos,
state level,
But you
correct?
could put it out
Call
there.
it a
Mhm.
condo and advertise it as such.
But you wouldn't be able to sell any units until after this was approved and submitted with the county.
And recorded, correct.
And-
So if there were some condos, we have this, we were able to resolve some of these. So for example, there's a irrigation easement that's shown here that was originally not submitted. That could have been something we added as a condition of approval of, here's the plat. We'll conditionally approve it that they add this irrigation easement after the fact. That would have been something where we would have held the plat, we would not have released it until that was executed, and then they could go record it. So we have that leverage for them to be able to begin selling these individually. They wouldn't be able to get deed. But as they did include it, we felt comfortable, like, okay, well, no conditions are necessary because they were able to get all those materials in time.
Do you guys feel like you had plenty of time to read through this agenda packet and get all the information you need and understand and peruse? Yeah,
I think so. I looked through the matrix, forget what it's called, but it
Mhm.
didn't, nothing jumped out to me from that.
Yeah, that's how I saw it, especially as we technically, even though it's being appealed to some degree, have an approved site plan. This separation of ownership and like how that's broken down is congruent with that site plan and congruent with everything they've been telling us from the beginning. So
Mm.
from an administrative perspective, this particular part of this build seems straightforward.
Right.
This particular part.
Right.
No comment on the rest. Yeah, same. It meets the criteria. I think this being an administrative decision, it certainly fits within the framework of what we're supposed to analyze. So I'm comfortable approving this particular condominiumization plat. If anyone would like to make a motion, we can certainly put something on the table and then have further discussion, or if there's other things we want to chat about or ask city staff, we can do all of that.
I'm happy to make a motion. This seems straightforward. So I move that the City of Moab Planning Commission approve the Cottonwood condominiums plat on property located at 214 South, 200 East, Moab, Utah, 84532.
Okay, we have a motion from Miles. Do we have a second?
Sorry, is it 214 or 241? It says 241 on the agenda.
Well, that's good
Ooh, yeah.
catch.
I'm
Rowan.
sorry, there's, so both, they're the two items, one of the street number says 214 and the other one is 241. And we
Oh,
might
sorry.
have
I believe this one.
I was-
this
I
one.
was
This
looking
one
at the
is
wrong one.
214.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I was looking at the wrong one.
Okay, so motion stands, from Miles. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second from Carolyn. Any discussion for the motion on the table right now? Okay, that said, we can take a vote. Maybe Corey, if you want to prompt us for an all in favor for the motion on the table, just because you can see everybody a little better.
Sure. All in favor of the motion?
I,
Aye. Okay, unanimously approved, 4-0.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone.
is there
Next.
any, timeline on this appeal process?
Yes, we have our first briefing argument early June. So there'll be a response brief following that. I don't think we have had the scheduling crop. They're usually quite slow. So
Okay.
I'm anticipating probably somewhere early July, we should have a ruling, would be
Okay.
my guess.
Corey, is there some sort of automatic stay process that kicks in with the land use appeal, or is it the same if there isn't a stay requested, that it just can proceed as usual absent the administrator weighing in?
You might have to rephrase that or at least restate it.
So in my realm, if you appeal something, pending a positive outcome on your appeal as the appellant, whatever it is you're appealing can proceed as usual. Unless you ask for a stay or like a temporary restraining order. I'm wondering how that works with the land use planning appeal process. If finalizing things is automatically sort of paused, or if things can continue to proceed absent like the appeal authority saying that things need to stop.
Correct. Yes, your description is correct and is the same with land use. I might also add that there's also a state ombudsman's opinion being requested at the same time,
Cool.
which does make the timing a little bit interesting. Is that I'm assuming we'll receive the ombudsman opinion first,
Mhm.
but that's purely an opinion that may inform, but not dictate the ALJ determination. In fact, I don't think they correlate at all, other than typically there's an ombudsman's opinion first to try to negate the need for a full appeal process. But yeah, there's some interesting interplay now with the new legislative conditions, how if an opinion is issued, how the determination of the case is actually, it becomes significant who is defending, or anyway, it gets complex, we'll put it that way. But your process is correct.
So there's nothing stopping anything from continuing to move forward while the appeal is pending.
Correct. And
Okay.
the appellant kind of notably said he was not going to issue a stay,
Okay.
or request for a stay.
Request to stay. I mean, it's a high bar. You have to like show likelihood of success on the merits. So,
Sure.
at least I assume, if it's like my realm.
Yeah, and as this is already built, I think it's
Yeah.
it's less intensive than maybe if it weren't built at all,
Totally.
as far as time frame goes.
Thanks for the explanation. I was just curious because last time that was sort of behind the scenes and we weren't actually really in the
Right.
process of approving things for the project.
Right.
Okay, thanks everyone for the discussion. Moving on, next action item is 4.2, consideration and possible recommendation of Moab City Resolution number 11, 2024, a resolution approving the Red Rock Retreat Townhome Plat for property located at 241 East, 100 North, Moab, Utah, 84532. This is also a briefing and possible action. City staff, it is all you.
Okay, so this is a 4-unit townhome development. The difference between a townhome development and a condo development is that townhomes will include land with the subdivision, whereas condos are just the individual building units. So clarifying that, this is located at 241 East, 100 North. It's in an R3 residential zoning district. It's a 12,196 square foot lot. And then they already have the building built as a 4-unit townhome type development. So the application for the subdivision was submitted on March 15th, 2024. Had development review team initially review it at on April 10th. And then it was forwarded to us to be at the meeting today. And then because our ordinance requires any multifamily with 7 units or more to go through the site plan review process. This one, being only 4 units, did not require that and have the DRT review with it. So it was all done through the building permit process. However, townhome plats or any kind of subdivision like that do require city council approval and planning commission as a recommendation body with our current ordinance. So that is where we're at. Here is the condo plat. It's pretty simple. Yeah, they are subdividing just the parcel underneath the land, and that's why this is the townhome, or the land underneath each unit, which is why this is a subdivision. And then they'll just be sharing common area, driveway access and that type of thing. I did go into our permits and I did find the site plan and elevation plan, so you kind of can see what the project looks like. And if I guess we can have anybody who has any questions about this.
I might offer similar kind of background to like we did the
Okay.
last one.
Mhm.
And on the screen, it did show briefly condominium plat. It is a townhome plat. Like Anna described, they are slightly different exercises. Within the ordinance and in the agenda summary that Anna prepared, it does describe, and we've had this findings policy in there for quite a while, of course, until we get our update done and carve out what will be a more robust or actual policy. Is townhomes kind of slip between a bit of a weird crack for Moab, is that we have a fairly complete condominium plat process and a subdivision process. Townhomes are a little bit somewhere in the middle, where it is an ownership overlay, but that overlay does, like Anna said, actually have subdivision of land component to it. Usually associated directly underneath those units. It can extend further, but it's a different description of land, like we talked about, I think this last time, between parcels and lots and town sites and all these things. This is just one more of those additional descriptions of a particular property. So they can be individually owned, and then usually what the biggest difference, or I think Anna and I were just reviewing something from APA that was kind of going into from the state of Utah, why we're seeing more or less condos, is lending reasons. People are usually more geared towards pursuing townhomes because of its lending options, because it does have a piece of land, no matter how kind of shared or simple that might seem on paper. You actually have land to associate, so lenders or banks can actually have some real property to associate it with, versus condo is simply that, an ownership overlay of space. It's paint to paint is kind of the term that's used in the building department. It's actually, to the face of a stud is technically where it is. But paint to paint, if you want to think about it that way. So that all being said, how this also mirrors to what we were just looking at with condominiums. This was originally or formerly titled the Auburn Townhomes. And this project, as far as the building permit, has been around prior to AEH as well. So it's active in construction. They're trying to advance forward. Clearly far enough now, like we did with our old procedures, that they can get an accurate plating description to move forward. So the question of, is this a new application, is it an old application? It is originally, and there were some subdivisions of land associated with this where the description of it as a townhome has been consistent throughout the entire project. So we feel the intent and process in our current policy or historic policies support that we are advancing this townhome plating. What I would say is if somebody, a brand new vacant property were to come online currently, or even an existing property that wants to convert to a condo or a townhome, that application, as I'm understanding from our attorneys, would be viewed as a change to the land use because it was historically approved as a multi-household or some other unit. That would require AEH designations. But as this was built as a process, this is a step in that overall umbrella, like we've talked about. We feel that it's not a separate process altogether. It's a separate step in the same process for C of O. So again, in the future with our rewrite, I think we're gonna clarify this and probably update so that there's no question at all at how that entitlement package works. But historically speaking, I think this has been proven inadequate to say, okay, you have entitlements to move forward with this townhome, even though the application's only coming for approval just now. Does that make sense? Ooh, did we lose Kaya? Oh, no, she's here.
I'm still here. I just turned my
Okay.
camera. I like the color schematics. That's actually nice.
They're not that color, I'll tell you that, on site.
So they just. been
I know
repainted.
there's like no color on site.
Mhm.
But like visually, it's much easier to look at the plans with that variation. So
That's a good note. I'll pass that along.
I don't know, my brain is much happier than I am looking at like an all black and white thing. So
Sure.
Corey,
yeah, I mean, another unfortunate, timing thing, this used to be a mobile home park, converted into condominiums with no occupancy or affordability
very
restrictions.
expensive.
Yeah. But it is what it is.
Townhomes. Corey, talk to us about how, because the townhomes come with land, how that shared driveway works. Because in a subdivision,
Mhm.
you would have, each parcel
Mhm.
would have access or easement
Mhm.
to get there. And if you're the last guy, how is he guaranteed access to his parcel that he owns with that shared?
Totally. Anna, would you go back to the platform?
Is that gonna be a street because it has
No,
full
so-
residences on it?
Right, so you're getting
And
to
it's the
kind of
name?
that point where I was saying the townhomes slip kind of between a full subdivision and
So
like
condo,
a condo.
townhome.
Is that's a common area, so technically it's not a public right of way, like a major subdivision or even a minor subdivision of more than 3 lots would require a right of way for access to that third or fourth person.
Mhm.
But as this is a private property, the descriptions of land, so you can see on this plat, the ownership is just the units themselves. So everything outside of that is as white, and if we were to have a more detailed picture, you can zoom in, that would be described as common area. So that's a shared driveway, a shared private driveway.
Okay.
So they, within their CCNRs, will have the maintenance agreements, maintenance and use agreements for that area, however they want to describe that, and particular private uses and those types of things.
And I think some of that was described in that HOA draft, if you read through
It,
some of that.
yeah, it should have been. correct.
$100 a month.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's very, very, very typical. And so we are holding them to what's called the private development standard versus public development standard. So anytime we're in a major subdivision context, it's all public because we're going to be maintaining it, so it has to be built to our standard.
Mhm.
Private standard is slightly advantageous because it's usually smaller, less, when I'm talking about asphalt or covering, it's usually less thick, hard surfacing. Not that they can't build to a public standard, we recommend it. But they have the option to build to that private standard. So good
But they're
question,
responsible for
but it's all
maintenance.
because we're defining it as a townhome plat, not a full-on individual subdivision property, which gets a lot more rights. So that's the big thing, is they might have some development flexibility, but they're sacrificing individual ownership rights, because they are part of this common private development.
Okay.
It's a hybrid of a condominium and
Yeah.
subdivision, basically.
That's how our code literally treats it, like a hybrid.
Mhm.
It should be its own thing, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably see some in the near future, not that we're quite to future agenda items yet. But we're seeing a lot of the site plans that we have going through the process are actually combining these two elements. So we have townhomes and condominiums on the same property, which is, again,
Adding twin
a bit
homes.
odd.
Mhm.
So you'll be seeing those coming sooner than later.
Mhm.
By dirt.
Buy dirt.
Mhm.
Yep, that's the idea.
Okay, thank you for the presentation and the discussion, everybody. This is so weird. I'm trying to talk so quietly, but I know it's still really loud.
Your volume's just
Just
perfect.
yell,
Yeah,
it's
you're
okay.
good.
Okay, all right, but I'm also just mumbling then. I feel like. Okay, that said, do we have I know last one we had a slide that was a potential motion. Let's help, there we go. There, as usual, is a possibility for a positive recommendation to city council on this. We can have a negative recommendation with reasons for that decision, or table it for a future time if we have reasons to do so as well. Would anyone like to take a hand at a motion?
I'm sorry, why does this one go to city council again? No, we talked about it.
No, good question. And so for, again, condominiums, as it's just an ownership aspect that there is no land, there is no division actually happening. Our code has treated it kind of as that administrative action. So you become the land use authority for that, which is described in the code, versus subdivisions, which is the default. It's the kind of the automatic default that we'd have to go to, is because there is a division of land happening here, albeit a bit of an odd description of land as a townhome plat
It's only the
aspect
dirt
Underneath
is what
that.
makes it.
So
Unit.
they don't
So
get
city
back there,
council,
yard,
currently,
anything.
they're the land use authority on any land divisions.
Mhm.
That will be changing going forward. We're probably gonna make it either staff or planning commission take city council out of the whole situation because it is administrative.
Probably something this size would just be an administrative decision once we do the rewrite. That's what we're looking at. And then like the more major, like subdivision or condo or townhome plats that are, 7 units or more will probably come to planning commission still.
As a part of their land use development, which would be
Exactly,
nice,
yeah.
kind of more like a
Mhm.
master plan development or a plan development system where it's all packaged together and you can kind of have the whole discussion instead of, well, pieces of discussion along a timeline.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks for the explanation, y'all. Okay. If anyone would like to make a motion, go for it.
I'll move that planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council on Moab City Resolution 11-2024, a resolution approving the Red Rock Retreat Townhome Plat of property located at 241 East 100 North, Moab, Utah.
Okay, we have a positive motion from Carolyn. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, a second from Miles. Any further discussion or questions with that motion on the table? Okay, Corey, if you want to call for a vote, that would be great.
All right, with the motion on the table, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carolyn, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Aye.
Unanimous 4-0. Thank you.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Anna, for your information and presentations. Okay, moving right along, future agenda items. What do we have?
So next, planning commission, we're gonna go back to the NAC rewrite and and the definition and use category being added to our ordinance. So,
With a public hearing.
yes, with the
For that
public
item.
hearing and then to city council. So our May 23rd meeting, that's our next meeting. We'll be doing the public hearing for the National Ability Center's use definition.
Cool.
So they are coming up with something they're gonna try to actually propose.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think I did send out noticing just today, so I got their final updated materials yesterday afternoon, so I have sent out the public hearing notice. Technically the deadline's next Monday, but as we had everything, just figured we'd start getting it sent out, so I think planning commission should have that in your emails. If you don't, let me know and I will double check.
I didn't check after 3 PM, but I,
Okay.
I have it in front of me and I don't see it.
Okay, I will send that out to the planning commission this afternoon then. But it has been sent out to the meeting notice, state website and our local website. Let's see, what else?
We have a lot, quite a few large projects in the works. It's just we're still working out the logistics and details before we can bring them to planning commission.
Yeah, I think we might have a minor subdivision possibly ready for you by the 23rd. Everything else is either going straight to city council or is it staff level? I
Yeah.
can think of.
Yeah, we do have a pre-annexation agreement that's going to city council next week on the 14th. So there's another annexation in the works.
All right.
Anywhere in the neighborhood of the last one or?
Same, off of Highway 191.
So yeah, the agreement that Anna was referencing it was actually already approved by city council. It's going back before city council with some amendments made by the applicant. After they've begun to explore their site plan a little bit further, they're gonna have to reduce the number of units they thought they're gonna be able to get on there. It's very likely we'll probably be seeing an annexation over in the River Sands Road area coming before us again. It sounds like there's works communication with the property owner there again.
And then the Chemley annexation and the one that we talked about a little while ago is going to city council on the 28th, right? What date is that? I think it's the 28th, right?
I think it's 14th.
No,
The next,
the Chemley annexation
Yeah.
one is not, it's not next
Wait.
week, it's the week after. that.
Oh, yes.
the 28th, yeah.
Yeah,
So following that, if it's approved, you'll see that site plan come before you.
but they, yeah, they're still very much at the beginning stages for the site plan review on that, so.
I have a question.
Say, go for it.
Would staff be open to ideas or suggestions about how we as a planning commission could get information or consider, I don't know if we amend bylaws or something to the effect of us being able to essentially, find a way to give us more time to read through all of these things and consider these things, whether it's something like, you know, the whole thing is brought to us and we vote to put it on the agenda to be heard at the next meeting.
Mhm.
And then we have those 2 weeks to peruse these materials and do our research as people who work full-time jobs and things. It's hard to get through sometimes all of this material in 48 hours
For sure.
notice. And I feel like maybe there's a way to do that if we get creative.
Yes.
Would you guys be open to that? Or
I think in short, the mechanism, there may be a mechanism there. I think Kaya might have
Yeah, I was gonna say, prior to having the official packet and the official items, I think like us being aware of the things we discussed for the future agenda items, and then I don't know what the legal procedure would be, Corey or Anna, with for sharing like maybe a working document of an agenda summary or something with us as city staff is putting it together, just so we have a little bit more of a heads up. But then we always have the opportunity and the option to table something if we do feel like we want more time with it too. And that can, I think, tabling it because we haven't had time as the planning commission to really delve in, ask questions of other community members, which of course is our job. That's all a really good and fine and acceptable reason to table something for a future meeting too. If
Nobody
folks.
would feel uncomfortable for tabling something because you weren't prepared. I mean, I feel a little, I want to table this because I didn't get
Right. That's,
time to
Yeah.
read all through.
I
I
mean-
feel like that's,
it's something that I think we as
that
staff
okay?
can work on. Kind of like I think you were mentioning is that we have some legal obligations for due
Yeah.
process, also limiting us to not processing things with excessive process for the applicant. So almost rather than, so what I'd rather do, and maybe a pitch to the mayor and how city manager, how we'd maybe approach the bylaws, and if not bylaws, the simple policy of staff of how we're updating the planning commission is not provide what is kind of the state required process or due process, which is 24 hours notice. And then you only have that for full material sets to review it.
Mhm.
And then tabling it, that could be chafing on the applicants because they're like, we've already waited. Now you're going to make me wait another 2 weeks
we
or
noticed
three.
it all, yeah.
Is what I'd rather do. And I think Anna are already starting to work on this is that there's this, the reason we don't obviously give you all the materials up front is sometimes, like I said with NAC, I didn't get them till last night and noticing was, and which is why we actually had to postpone. We were going to have a public hearing at this meeting and I didn't get the updated materials from them until 3 o'clock the day of the noticing. So I wouldn't have, we didn't have time to even get it out the door. It's so to my point, not to pick on anybody because I get everyone's busy, including the applicants, is we're usually getting material right at the last minute in order for us to even get it on the agenda. So we barely even have enough time to process it. So I think what Anna and I have been talking about is pushing a whole week in advance. So giving the planning commission at least 1 week, if not more,
Yeah.
of pure review period
Mhm.
that doesn't infringe on the applicant's due process.
Yeah.
That's gonna mean that they're gonna have to, if they get it to us late and it's not gonna give the planning commission enough time, they're gonna have to get postponed. So it kind of puts the ball in their court of
Yeah.
you guys have to
The
make sure you get
responsibility.
us with materials so that you don't have to get pushed. So we used to have a soft policy on that, and Kyle, you'll recall, we'd send out agendas on the Friday before
Yeah.
the week prior, send out the agenda. But what we've seen is applicants, almost got done or something's not quite right. So it bleeds into the next week and then 2 days after that, and then we have to process update materials. So I think, long story short, I think we can, now that this has come up and kind of been formalized a little bit, I think Anna and I will sit down and we'll carve out a policy so that we're gonna begin informing the applicants, this is the policy. If you've missed this deadline, we will not be able to get to plan commission.
Yeah.
For you guys to have
I
enough
think
time to
that's
review.
fair. Give
I
them,
think so.
to make sure that they have their materials into us within probably a week and a half or 10 days
I guess
prior
That's a
to
couple
the,
days,
yeah,
so you have that full.
to go through what
6
they
days
submitted.
and a half,
Yeah.
period.
Well, and I think what you're saying, Corey, like that changes the expectation on the applicant's part, where it's not just like, oh, if I get it in prior to the 24-hour noticing period, it can be on it. It's like there are other things at play. There are other things that need to happen. And like to reiterate, I will always feel comfortable as a planning commissioner, as the chair, whatever, going to bat for tabling something or for pushing it to our next meeting. If there are those situations, in the interim before we kind of get that in place, or even in the future, if it's really like our job is to be the voice of the community and to engage with other citizens and to represent their concerns and things like that. And if we don't have time to adequately do that, I do think it's okay for us to push something, 2 weeks. If it's something that is like a large controversial project or if it's something that's really complicated and, there's things we need to consider that we haven't considered before. Like, I would rather do that and have a sound, well-informed decision that the community was a part of than to like be like, oh, you got it to us 24 hours before, therefore you are automatically entitled to a decision right now on the applicant's part. And staff might disagree with me, but that's just my perspective on it.
I agree, Anna.
I definitely agree.
I think what I will say, because we know this is going to happen, is that we're not the only ones running a lot of these timelines, and we've experienced this. I think even with this group, is we were kind of directed by city admin, like, "Hey, this is going to be at city council the next meeting, so you have to have it on your agenda." And we've even had special meetings to accommodate some of those rush periods.
Yeah.
And so that's something I think we will obviously use sparingly. And probably not ever at our discretion. It'll probably need to be coming from somewhere else. But I think if the plan commission authentically engages and say, I just genuinely haven't had enough time, but if it's controversial and we're just kind of prolonging for a sense of, well, I didn't think more people were going to show up and I want more people to show up, that may not be a sufficient reason to table. But anyway, so this is my big disclosure in the front end is like, I think Anna, I can install that policy, but I can't guarantee 100% of the time that might be the case. We may need to advance some items because of bigger picture approval noticing requirements. I'm thinking mostly annexation things. What else? There are very few items that really transition across the whole board that really are. I'm coordinating with Summer months in advance on, well, you're going to have it. You've already noticed your public hearing at this date. Planning commission, we had to cancel. Anyway, let's be as flexible as we can. But I think Anna and I will commit to earning you guys at least that 7 days. I think that's 100% reasonable.
And
Yeah,
if we
thank
came
you.
up with some kind of, I don't know, something where we could put something in the bylaws that the way we're gonna do it from now on is this.
I'll explore that with Summer and Kaya. We'll sit down and say, how do we formalize it in the bylaws, or do we do a standards of operation where it's maybe not, we're not violating policy if we
No,
advance it one
absolutely
night,
not.
but it's like, here's what our standards
Okay.
are. I think that's a great idea because then it gives us a little defense. And the applicants come in and they, we got all this money riding, we need it done. I'm like, I'm sorry, our
Our
standards
policy
require
is
us.
This and this.
Right.
this.
And that's usually what it is we feel put into a hard place if
Maybe
there's
would take the pressure off of,
totally.
yeah.
Well, and I think,
and the
uh,
pressure.
I think legally, if we say like, here's the requirements, but here's what our standards are, but that is always subject to what have you, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's just putting out there that like, here are the timelines that we're hoping to operate on, and then like applicants working within those. And then I think that does give good justification to having more time if we need to set that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Good question, Mika. I mean, that's the kind of thing that like, I don't know, I feel like the longer you've been on the planning commission, the more you're like, oh yeah, that's just how it happens and it stinks. Sometimes you don't have that much time, but I appreciate you bringing that up and saying like, no, really, it would be ideal and we could come to better conclusions and be more informed and better engage people if we actually had more time on these things. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, within the land use world, reasonably debatable is, that's that big favorite term of ours. And I think it's reasonably debatable that you need a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
And that isn't always defined in state code or LUDMA is, that can be by standards of operation determined. So I think it's super well timed. I think we've got a bunch of projects coming forward that are going to be,
Yeah.
so I'd rather get this done up front than kind of be behind the ball. So I applaud the timing on this.
And we are not just a rubber stamp either. I know sometimes it feels that way because we're administrative, but the discussion that we have and the processes that we go through, even if we do have a delineated outcome we need to come to based on the facts, that's all still really important. We're not just a computer like giving a check on stuff. And so I think that's particularly important for that reason. Anything else? Corey, Anna, anybody? How's the code overhaul coming?
Yes, one last note on the comment or the subject we were just talking about. Summer is watching. She sent a quick line saying she thinks it would be appropriate for a policy, maybe not for bylaws, but certainly
Yeah.
for policy.
Yep.
But yeah, that's where my mind began to drift, was an update with our rewrite. So we are currently exchanging with our consultants on the first round of proposed framing. So we haven't quite got to content yet. Anna's made a review on that. I've reviewed, and I think Michael's reviewing. We have not sat down collectively to start getting through that, and that's why I think we haven't quite made it into a public sphere yet, as we want to refine it a little bit further, obviously. But it's in the works. I will say it has taken a slow. I think are going to delay one of the site visits, and we're delaying some of the interviews because of the administrative level of the city. There's been a lot going on, city manager shift and everything else going. So we've had a lot less time between Michael and I that we thought we might have to really engage into this. So I think in addition to the movement with Walnut Lane, we're hoping as Walnut Lane and those proceedings kind of get to a more stable place, city manager gets to a more stable place, Michael and I are going to pedal to the metal a little bit. It's definitely, he's made it clear it is his priority. But it's exciting. It's definitely, for me, and Anna and I are just talking about this, very hard for me, who has framed my whole world is navigating this code. So trying to extract pieces of it and reframe is really kind of bizarre. So I'm trying to be patient and just kind of sit back to let the framing maybe make sense to most people, and then me acclimate to it, because it feels very unnatural, some of the amendments that are being proposed so far. So I hope it comes to a unified place where it becomes really accessible and easy for the public, but also very legally navigable for staff. But it is exciting, and we are, again, still taking contributions as far as things we should be identifying. I have a running list from staff, and every day there's usually one thing we continue to plug in. But for commission as well, as we're reviewing things, or even just as you're engaging in the community, you're like, oh yeah, that's something I think that we really ought to look at. Please email Anna or I.
Or even in the matrices, because those matrices
Absolutely.
are straight from our ordinance. You can say this part doesn't really make sense. Maybe we can do
Absolutely.
something, have you considered doing something like this? Any input would be great, gratefully appreciated, so.
I mean,
Yeah.
even just tonight, talking about townhomes,
Mhm.
it's getting a process set up for those.
What are we gonna do for that?
Yeah, I think, yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. That being all, I will adjourn this meeting of the Moab City Planning Commission at 7:02 PM. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, in a couple weeks. I hate these times when we're on the off weeks with city council. It's confusing.
All right, bye, Kai. I think we're gonna lose you when we stop
Okay,
streaming.
cool. Thank you. Thank you.